Success! Oh, hi. Glad you're here. I'm glad to be with you. I've been going over some stuff, getting older, wanting to document before I forget. So much like the stories of my life, I went over all the amazing concerts I've been to, which, man, let me tell you, I'm very fortunate. But I'm also very fortunate to have met a lot of people. They say don't meet your heroes. I haven't really been disappointed in that arena as of yet. Well, there was one instance, but that's a story. We'll get there. So I wanted to go over and document all the, let's say, celebrities I've met. Now, most of these people are people that most people haven't heard of, but the people who have heard of them would understand and appreciate, why I was so thrilled. I remember being like a little kid. Thanks to my dad's job, like there was this one football player we played football with. I can't remember who it was, but he was an NFL player. There was a baseball player that went to his job once. Oral Hershiser, one of the greatest pitchers of all time. One time the president went to my dad's work, but the closest my dad got was he was the floor underneath him. Which president was that? Reagan? Bush? OG Bush? I think it might have been OG Bush Senior. Anyway, but then, because I'd never really had much experiences with meeting celebrities until I remember one time my brother ran into Ice Cube in an elevator at a hotel once. And we were like, whoa. And when I worked at my very first job at IHOP here in Colorado, there was a time when all of a sudden there was a line out the door to one of our booths because I guess someone leaked on the radio that Vin Diesel was at our IHOP. Because that was an area that's right next to the hotels, that's right next to the airports. So sometimes people would come through, and yeah, sure enough, Vin Diesel was there, and I was just trying to work. There was just a bunch of people in my way. I couldn't care less about Vin Diesel at the time. This was like back in the Riddick days. This was before Fast and Furious, so he didn't really have much going on. I just remember him being really small, a very small man. I don't know how, he's not that big of a guy. He's pretty small. Anywho, so once we first finally started getting Comic Cons here in my city, that changed the game. And I was like, what? I can just go there and meet people? So I did. Man, this is a lot of. Oh, right. My first experience with meeting people was when I went to the very first Star Wars celebration. Back when it was cool. Now it's just pomp and circumstance. It's like, oh my gosh, it's too much. But I went to the original two. I'm talking 1999 and 2002. But 2002, it had already exploded into a huge deal. Because back then, they were just doing it to promote the prequel trilogy. So 2002 was a huge deal. George Lucas was there. Carrie Fisher was there. I didn't get a chance to see either of them because it was just chaos. But I did get a chance to ask a couple of questions to a couple of celebrities back then in 2002, including Joel Edgerton, who is now a big deal. But in the very first Star Wars celebration in Denver, Colorado, in 1999, just a couple of weeks before Episode 1 was released, I remember being in the shop, the store of the celebration, and my dad noticed that the gentleman Hugh Quarshie, yeah, who played Captain Panaka in Episode 1, my dad noticed him and said, hey, you gotta come meet my son. My dad was cool like that. And he brought him over, and I was like, starstruck, like, oh my gosh, here's this guy that I'm about to see in this movie. And he's standing right next to me, talking to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's nice to meet you. Shook his hand. And I said, I'm looking forward to seeing you in Episode 1. And he said, "I'm looking forward to seeing me in episode 1 too." And he had like a British accent I didn't see come. It was that was a great time. And Warwick Davis was there at that celebration, and I remember going to his panel, and I got to ask him a question. I was all nervous, but I was on the little microphone, and I asked him a question. And I remember asking Warwick Davis. He played Wicket. If you don't know who Warwick Davis is, he played the Leprechaun. He played Willow. Currently not streaming on Disney Plus, the show anyway, which was fantastic. Don't get me started. But I asked Warwick Davis because I've always liked the Ewoks. Never had an issue with them, and it always frustrated me that people crapped on Return of the Jedi, which was the best of the original trilogy, if you ask me, my favorite growing up. And I've always loved the Ewoks. So I asked him, how do you feel about the fact that people are always crapping on the Ewoks? That people just, always talking smack and this and that. And he just proceeded to explain the purpose of the Ewoks and why they were important to him and their necessity of the story. Because originally George Lucas intended for the Ewoks to be Wookiees, and that was supposed to be Kashyyyk, not Endor. But I think there was budget stuff, but this and that. But then he also decided it would be more important for the story, and Warwick Davis explained that the whole point of the Ewoks is that they were little, cute, cuddly creatures with nothing but sticks and stones that ended up essentially overthrowing the Empire. That was in a very important part of winning that battle on Endor, which then, of course, resulted in winning the war. And the point being that it doesn't matter how big or small you are, and it doesn't matter if you have laser cannons or just sticks and stones. If you band together and unite and join for a cause, you can win any battle. You can overthrow an empire if you have the determination. So that's what that represented in the story, and it was great. And then afterward, everybody rushed to the stage to get his autograph. And I was like, well, if they're all going up there, I'm going to go up there. I didn't have anything for him to sign, though. And I'll never forget, I go up to Warwick Davis. At the time, let's see, he was 99, so I was 16 years old. Yeah, so I was a 16-year-old kid with my little Colorado Avalanche jacket. And I went up to him, and he was signing all this stuff for everybody. And then he looked at me, and he had this confused look of, where's the thing you want me to sign? And I looked at it, and I said, I just want to shake your hand. Because to me, that was more important. Like, I don't need someone's autograph. I want to shake their hand. I want to have that memory. I said, oh, that's great. And he had the huge hands. And he shook my hand. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just met Willow. So that was like a very surreal experience for me. And since then, he's gone on to do all kinds of things that I'm a huge fan of, like Life's Too Short. If you're not familiar with the Ricky Gervais produced program about Warwick Davis, one of the greatest comedies I've ever seen in my life. Liam Neeson has one of the greatest things in that. Anyway, seek out Life's Too Short. It might be on HBO Max. Whatever. So yeah, meeting Warwick Davis was a delight. There was also, like, before we were all let in on that first day, Anthony Daniels, aka C-3PO, came out to the crowd and was like, smiles, people, smiles. I didn't formally meet him, but I was this close to him, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's C-3PO standing right there in front of me. It was insane as a 16-year-old. I think that was anybody notable as far as meeting them. I saw plenty of Star Wars actors at those celebrations, but meeting and shaking their hands was Hugh Corsi and Warwick Davis. Now, shortly after I had my son, I went to see my favorite comedian. Not a big fan of Starbucks. I like to drink my coffee at home. I see this line at Starbucks every day, and I don't understand why people go to Starbucks drive-thru every single day. You know how expensive that is? If you're going to Starbucks every day, get a coffee maker. Make it at home. It's cheaper, quicker, easier, more convenient. Anywho. So I'm not a big fan of Starbucks. I don't like Starbucks. But I like coffee. Anywho, I went to see my favorite comedian of all time. He was here in the Springs. this is the whole deal. I'll end up going through all of it probably. I'm going to ramble too much about everything. That's why this is probably going to be like 10 videos. What are you going to do? This is for me, not you, but thanks for being here. Most people know him as Anger from Inside Out. This was not planned that I happen to be using this cup today, by the way. Lewis Black. My favorite comedian, Lewis Black, who I discovered on The Daily Show with my father many, many years prior. So I got to see him live, and it was a great experience. And then after the show, he was like, hey, swing by, and I'll be signing autographs. I was like, what? Like, we had no idea. Like, they announced that right before the show started. Stick around. Meet Lewis. What? Apparently that was something he did a lot back then, and then ever since COVID, he doesn't really do anymore. So I was very fortunate to have this experience. So after the show, even though my baby mama at the time was very sour, made the show slightly less enjoyable for me because she was, being a sourpuss, but I still had a great time, great show. And I demanded that I'm sticking around to meet him. I don't care what she says. Luckily, she took a picture of that moment. I have it somewhere. So I have a picture of not only me meeting Lewis Black, getting Lewis Black's autograph that I have right here. Should I grab that? Should I grab these things? You can take my word for it. I have his autograph on the ticket. And I got to shake his hand. And I told him, I've been a fan of yours since The Daily Show. And he's like, wow, that's a while ago. And I'm like, yeah, I can't remember what I said, but I said something that made him laugh. I made my favorite comedian laugh. That was pretty cool. So I got to meet Lewis Black. So that's really awesome. So then now we come to my first ever Comic-Con here in my city. And the fact that it's branched out. Like, it was one thing that it's San Diego, great. But then eventually they started doing Denver Comic-Con. I'm not driving to Denver. So then, boom, all of a sudden, Colorado Springs Comic-Con, I've missed 2 since they've started doing it. The one that was immediately after COVID, and then this year, I was unable to go due to financial restraints from personal stuff that I'm going through. Ironically enough, the only 2 Colorado Springs Comic-Cons that I've missed were the 2 that William Shatner was at, so I just blame him. But the very first Colorado Springs Comic-Con I went to, and I was so excited because I grew up a huge fan of Power Rangers. The original Power Rangers. I followed Power Rangers religiously until all of the original 5 cast members were no longer on the show. Then I didn't care anymore. I was all about the OG. And at this particular Comic-Con, there was going to be a few of not only the OG Power Rangers, but the ones that were the first to replace them. Like those first original 3 that ended up in the movie. And then the one that ended up replacing Amy Jo Johnson. Amy Jo Johnson, the original Pink Ranger, was my first ever human crush. I say human crush because technically my first ever crush was Ariel the Little Mermaid, but she's a cartoon, so I guess that doesn't count. But my first ever in the flesh crush was Amy Jo Johnson, the Pink Ranger from Power Rangers. I had a trading card of hers and would treat it like it was my photo of my girlfriend and put it on my mantle, for goodness sake. I was so in love with her. So when I found out that Amy Jo freaking Johnson was coming to my local Comic-Con, I was like, am I gonna get a chance to meet her? So I took the photo op. It's hanging up there on my wall. I paid extra for a fancy schmancy photo. I've learned in recent history, it's one thing to meet a celebrity. It's another thing to get their autograph. But more important than the autograph is the handshake. I'll take a handshake over an autograph any day. But I've recently learned that even more important than either of those things is a picture. If you can get a picture with them, it's like, look, there I am standing next to them. I met them. There's a moment of their life. That was a moment in my life. Intersecting. How great is that? And it's only been the recent, last couple of years that celebrities started being like, oh, you know what? Because the professional pictures would be so freaking expensive. And then you just have this big glossy photo. But then they started coming around to, oh, hey, for an extra 10, 20, whatever dollars, on top of the autograph, you can take a selfie on your phone. So I take that opportunity any chance I get in recent memory, because then I'm like, look, I have a picture with this person on my phone that I can share on all social media. But Amy Jo Johnson, first she did a panel, and I asked her, because this was shortly before the reboot film came out, the one with Bryan Cranston and you know, the most recent film. And I said, hey, are you going to do a cameo in the new Power Rangers movie? And she very, very cleverly, strategically, very honestly answered that with, they already finished filming. Oh. So I didn't realize till after the fact that she didn't technically answer that question. She dodged it beautifully without lying to me by simply saying, oh, they already finished filming. Well, the part she left out was, yes, she already filmed a cameo in that film, which I saw in the theater with my son later. So I got to, join her panel, which was great, but then I paid for the pictures. So we're standing in line getting ready for our photo ops with her. So I didn't get her autograph this time. To be continued. Because I'd rather have the photo and I can only afford one or the other. Because like I said, this is my first ever crush. And now here we are, like, 20 years later. And I'm meeting her. She was all very tan because I followed her on social media. She had just come back from Italy. We're standing in line and she's clickety-clacking with her high heels coming down, like, wondering why everyone isn't freaking out. But because we're all shy. We're a bunch of freaking 35-year-old nerds being like, oh my god, it's Kimberly. And she's like, hey. And we're like, hey. Because we're seeing our first crush in the flesh. So we go into this little tent to take the picture. And she's like, hey. And I'm like, hey. And she puts her arm around me for the photo. And I'm like, oh, okay, if we're doing that. So I put my arm around her. But she was wearing like her shoulders were exposed. She had the straps on her top. So I touched her shoulder. And I was like, oh my god, I just touched her shoulder. And then she did like a tiny little, like after the picture, a tiny little belch in my ear came out of her mouth. And she went, oh my gosh, excuse me, I just burped in your ear. I'm so sorry. And I'm literally like, that's okay. She's like, I'm sorry, I just had a Coke. So sorry for burping in your ear. And I'm thinking, like, thank you. You can burp wherever you want. Burp in my ear all day. Because, wow. Amy Jo Johnson burped in my ear, and boy, am I thrilled about it. So that was my meeting Amy Jo Johnson. But also there, I remember when we first arrived, there was a panel, like nobody was there yet, because we always go on Friday afternoons for our Comic Cons. The busiest day is Saturday, but Fridays, we get this line of people, and I'm just looking down the row of Power Ranger, Power Ranger, Power Ranger, Power Ranger, Power Ranger, and I'm like, are you kidding me? And I just got to walk up to them. But the two that were like the headliners that had their own special areas because they had the longest lines ever at a Comic-Con I've been to. Every time they've gone, there's been the longest lines. There's Amy Jo Johnson. And then there was Jason David Frank, who is no longer with us. And I'm very fortunate to, like I said, to be continued. I met Amy Jo Johnson twice. And I met Jason David Frank 3 times. Amy Jo Johnson I then met again a few years later at the Denver Comic-Con, simply because A, she was going to be there, and that particular Comic-Con was on my birthday. So I was like, well, what better thing to do on my birthday than to meet Amy Jo Johnson? And then when we got there, they were like, sorry, she's not going to make it on Friday. She won't be here till Saturday. And I'm like, are you effing kidding me? I won't be here. So I don't get to see Amy Jo Johnson on my birthday? But then I guess her flight came in at the last minute, and she barely showed up to sign a few autographs right before Comic-Con was over that day. So luckily I did get to go up to her, and I got to actually get her autograph this time, and I had her sign the same exclusive comic book that Jason David Frank signed. So I have a comic of both. All of this stuff is right here. Okay, forgive me. Some of this stuff is going to be dusty. I don't want to get any dust on my precious hoodie. Because if there's one person I wish I could meet, let me tell you. Let me tell you, talk about a bucket list. There's only one thing on my bucket list, and she's done plenty of meet and greets, but I don't live in New York. Anyway. I'm just thrilled that she's responded to one of my comments and like that was the day before. Okay, I'm getting sidetracked. Okay, so pardon the dust and spoilers. So look, there's Lewis Black's autograph from the ticket to his show. That's all I had for him to sign. I was like, here, sign my ticket. Back when we would actually get tickets, and now it's all scan on your phone and nothing tangible. So that's a bummer. So that was 2013. January 19th, 2013, that I met Lewis Black. And he went over like the fact that, because then later, when I had a week stint in jail, they had his book, and I read it, and that's what got me through that week. And I was so thankful because I felt like I was there because I needed to read this book, and I read Lewis Black's book. He's got a few, but this was like the first one. This was like his autobiography, pretty much. And it was amazing, the stories he told. But he used to live here in Colorado Springs, and he had stories about places that I've been. So that's, so he's got a personal connection here. And that book changed my life in so many ways. So, here's to Lewis Black, who just announced he's going to retire from touring after next year, which is a bummer. Because I had tickets to see him again while I survived 2 years without getting COVID. And then I happened to get COVID from my son, who got it from school, literally days before we actually had that Lewis Black concert, and I had to not go. But I reached out to him on Twitter, and I was like, Ticketmaster wouldn't even give me a refund. And he responded and was like, if I ever come back around town, you contact my website, and we'll hook you up. I'm like, sweet, how nice of him. And he hasn't come back to my town since. So I certainly hope he does in the next year. You think he would, having lived here before. Anyway. So that's my Lewis Black autograph. Here's my Amy Jo Johnson picture. And it's funny, in retrospect, like, I had this huge beard. I was like, look how cool I am with my huge beard. And this is one of the most important pictures ever taken of me in my entire life. And boy, I wish I didn't have this stupid beard. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that beautiful, beautiful woman. I met her. Oh, gorgeous. She looked stunning. Oh, look, she's touching my shoulder. And she burped in my ear and apologized to me. Isn't she gorgeous? Oh my gosh. We make a great couple, don't we? I'm just saying. She was single at the time. Then I watched her directorial debut. She's great. Anyway, so I had her the second time sign this. It's in pink. You can see right there. Amy Jo Johnson, a.k.a. Kimberly. But when I met Jason David Frank the first time, this is an exclusive comic from my very first Colorado Springs Comic-Con. Okay? So this is an exclusive to that Comic-Con. And then I got the artist of the cover to sign it. I've got Amy Jo Johnson's signature on it, on the cover here. Ooh, to Paul and Flynn. To Paul and Flynn, Jason David Frank. There's more Power Ranger autographs in this specific comic. This has got to be like one of the most valuable autograph things that I own, because there's so many autographs on one thing. No, it's true. I don't know if you heard that. There was just a really loud truck horn for a long period of time there. That was interesting. Who, now that he's unfortunately passed away. But when I first met him, he was doing autographs. We paid for the autograph. He was also he was one of the first that I saw and pay extra for a picture. I was like, nah, I'm not paying extra for a picture. But I had my son with me, who, 2016, he was 4 at the time. Avid Power Ranger fan. I loved Power Rangers from elementary school through middle school. My son literally grew up on Power Rangers because they were releasing the original seasons on DVD for the first time as my son was like 2, 3, 4. So he literally grew up on them too. So he was very excited to meet these Power Rangers. But when we first met Jason David Frank, nicest guy in the world to his fans, nicest guy in the world the first couple of times I met him. And we're like, no, we can't afford the photo. We'll just get the autograph. So he signs this. He interacts with my son. He gives my son this sticker. Whoopsie. But yeah, that's because he's played all of those Power Rangers. So he gave this sticker to my son. And then, even though we didn't pay for it, he goes, you guys want to take a photo? And he takes a picture with me and my son. That might be the thumbnail. Something's going to be the thumbnail for this one. Probably that. Because I only have photos from like him and her. And then it wasn't until the last couple of Comic Cons I went to where I was like, yes, I'm going to pay for the photo. Thank you. So Jason David Frank, nicest guy in the world. To his fans. But that's some autographs there. I also have Tommy Wiseau's autograph. But that's just because I ordered a shirt. And that was, I don't know if he still does this, but he gives his autograph with every single thing that people order. So this is from 2018. It says, to Paul, love is blind. Love, Tommy. So that's nice that I have his autograph, even though I haven't gotten a chance to meet him. This one down here, Paul, thanks so much for the support. That's Robin Paris. She's a filmmaker. She does the series on Funny or Die of The Room actors, Where Are They Now? It's hilarious. She played the chocolate is the symbol of love lady making out on the couch in The Room. And I spoke to her a few times online. I don't know if that counts. But I was very much in support of her deal. So we also met this guy when we were meeting all these Power Rangers at our first Comic-Con. Because there was Jason David Frank and Amy Jo Johnson were the big ones, obviously. But there was also this guy who was all energetic and was like, hey! And he suckered me into this autograph. I did not have any intention of getting his autograph whatsoever, but I had to pay for it because he, like, started talking to my son. He was like, hey, what's up? Blah, blah, blah. You know who I am? Look who I am. Blah, blah, blah. You want my autograph? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, sure. But he played the kid in the Power Rangers Turbo movie. So he suckered my son into begging me for an autograph after he was so nice to him. So, you know, I was like, fine, here's a few bucks. To Flynn, best wishes. The little kid who played Justin. He didn't look like that anymore, though. He was a grown man, full of energy. But so was Rocky. The guy who played Rocky in the original movie was there. The guy who played Adam in the original movie was there, who I was a huge fan of. What are their names? They're probably written down here. Johnny Young Bosch, who played Adam. Who's this person? Is that Steve? No, it's Blake Foster. There's Steve. Yeah, the guy who played the guy who played Rocky, the Red Ranger in the original movie. So we met him, got his autograph. All those autographs are in this comic. Every Power Ranger I have met, I have their autograph in this comic. And I've met all but obviously the original Yellow Ranger passed away long before this. But I just need the original Black Ranger Zack and the Yellow Ranger that was in the original movie. Those are the only two that I haven't met from the original cast bleeding over into the original movie cast. And Power Rangers Turbo, because I met the kid, and we met the lady who played Divatox in Power Rangers Turbo. So that was cool. She signed the Turbo DVD because I insist, because it's Comic-Con, because it's Comic-Con, I insisted on getting the autographs of people on a comic, so their first the first appearance of theirs on the comic, so because they're on the cover, I had them sign the cover. On the inside, when you first see the other characters, I have them signing that as well, including the Catherine Sutherland, who replaced Amy Jo Johnson. I got her autograph, and she was so sweet to Flynn. Gave him an additional autograph on this little trading card, and gave him like a sticker. So sweet. Like, everybody was so sweet to my son, which I really appreciate. Again, they say don't meet your heroes, but I have had nothing but positivity from every celebrity I've met. So she was a sweetheart. I was watching The Cell, starring, last week for Halloween, starring Jennifer Lopez and Vince Vaughn and Vincent D'Onofrio. I had no idea that the corpse at the beginning, that's naked, was played by Catherine Sutherland. I met her. Anyway, she was a sweetheart. Yep, Hillary Shepard, all that. So you got all these Power Rangers in here. It wasn't until the second Comic-Con that I met Paul, what's-his-face, and other dude, the original Bulk and Skull. And I also, at a future Comic Con, met the original Jason, and he gave us the scoop that he was coming back to the show. This was a few years ago. So we have the original Jason's autograph in this comic. We have everybody. My favorite Power Ranger. There's Bulk and Skull. Got their autographs. They were. This was the Sunday after we had they had the Comic Con party on Saturday night. You could tell that they were hung over as heck. All they wanted was their coffee. They weren't as energetic, but they were very nice to everybody who was waiting in like Jason David Frank's line, because Jason David Frank's line was always really, really long. So they would come over and chum it up with us during that. So I've got their autographs in here. I've also got, I mean, the other one might have the others because they didn't feature in this particular comic. And like I said, I want the autographs on the actual characters. Where's Billy? Should I have Billy in here, or is that in the other one? Billy might not be featured in this one. Now this is just dead air. Sorry, I don't know why I'm showing you this, because you don't care. But I do. Like I said, these are for me, not you. But thanks for joining me. We're going to have to end this one and move on to part 2, but... Where is... Yeah, it must be in the other one. But I have a lot of autographs on this one, as you can see. Good times. Whoop. But yes, I ended up meeting also David Yost, a.k.a. Billy, the original Blue Ranger, who has now just returned to Power Rangers in the new season. Very monumental and historic, and my son and I have been thoroughly enjoying that new season, mainly because he's back, and then Zach came back for the one special. Anyway, I like the Power Rangers. What do you want from me? So, we'll move on to part 2, because I have only gone over about a quarter of the people that I need to go over. Look, Reese Prime. Look, all those people I met. We've got to go over some more. All these people I met. Got to go over some more. So, tune in for part 2 if this was even remotely interesting. I thought it was. But they're my stories, my memories, that I would like on record in case I ever forget, which would suck, because who would want to forget that? Whew! Anyway, back when I had teeth. Good thing I had teeth for that picture. Just like my Korn one. You'll see in the other one, the bands I've met. I think the thumbnail is my Korn, when I met Korn. Biggest smile you'll ever see on my face in my life. As far as in a photo. I'm sure the biggest smile of my life was when I had my son, but meeting Korn was right up there. Anywho, speaking of, let's move on to that. Okie dokie.